Hi gang. I'd like to go through a few of the Premiere tools with you here. Some of it will be a refresher and some of it will be new. Before I do, I just want to remind you that there are a ton of great Premiere tutorials out there. If you're hung up, there is LinkedIn Learning, which used to be lynda.com, which is available free through the library. You log into your library thing and go to LinkedIn Learning, and you can access all of their materials, which is great. Adobe on their website has a ton of really good free tutorials. And honestly, a lot of times you can just, on YouTube, Google your question and there will be somebody who has an answer. The only problem with YouTube is some people will have better answers than others, right? And better videos. But LinkedIn Learning or Premiere have both awesome, high quality tutorials. So, having said that, I'm going to give you guys a quick rundown through some of the tools that we haven't talked about yet. So you'll remember this is our tool window. Our main one is our selection tool. This is sort of the one we use most of the time. You'll see the keystroke for that is V. So if you are a keystroke user like me, rather than coming up here to select, if you're ever muddled, a lot of the times if something's just a little whack, it's often because you're in the wrong tool. So an easy way to sort of figure that out is just to hit the V key and get back to your normal icon tool and make sure you've got it in the right place. Okay, but that said, we'll go through some of our other tools here. The track select forward is a really handy one if you want to make room for something. So if you've decided that after this spot in your thing, you want to click and drag everything out of the way, you just use your track selection tool and it will move them and make room for that. So that's a really handy tool to do. Again, Command Z is your friend if you want to undo something. You'll see that there are other options, like with Photoshop. If you click and hold the tools down, there are other options here. So in this case, you can select back the other way. I have never figured out when that would be useful, but apparently, I suppose it could be when you want to close up a gap that you've made. But mostly I just delete the gaps. So your track select forward tool. Now these next set of tools, ripple, roll, and rate stretch, are all ones we are not going to deal with this time. They have to do with really fine-tuning your edit, but I think that is sort of the next step in your growth will be to learn to use ripple and roll, but we're not going to do that today. The rest of them, though, are pretty handy at this stage. So your razor tool, which the shortcut is C for cut is how I remember it, can be really useful. So what that will do, if I zoom in here to let you see, is when you click on a clip, it basically splits it at that point and turns them into two separate clips. So that can be really handy if you decide you want to shorten something and it's in the middle, rather than sort of dragging the end point to there. You can just click the razor, then you're going to want to be sure to go back to your main tool, and then you would click on the section you want to delete and hit delete. You can also then sort of, once it's split there, you can drag the ends like we've done before and change how that fits and close up your gap. Just so you know, this is the tutorial video I did on shooting sequences, which you can go back and look at. It's in your list of tutorials. So, and while we're at it, I'm going to take a moment here and sort of show you what a typical timeline looks like for me. What I like to do is put my B-roll and natural sound on my first tracks, V1 and A1 here. And then I put my narration here below. I like that to go on audio too. And then any natural sound, any added natural sound, any sound effects, things like that, I would add on this next line down. The reason I like to do that is because I like to sort of really keep things organized and be able to quickly scroll through and see what's happening. So you'll see what I do here above this on V2 is, you can see, is so any graphics that I do. Graphics, added layers of special effects, I put up on the third and the fourth track up. So then, like I said, it's really easy for me to quickly go through here and see which of these are, what is what when I need to change something or if I want to find something again. The other thing here that's really useful is these sort of mute and solo. So for instance, I down here added some audio, and I was not sure what it was. So here I have this layer of audio. What is that? So if I solo this, like in Audacity we had mute and solo, right? So if I solo this, I can play. And I can see that I added a little better sound of the 3D printer here that I was shooting because I didn't think it was loud enough in my other shot. So I added the natural sound from where I had placed the wireless mic, from a different shot where I had placed the wireless mic very close to it so you could hear it. So being able to solo that lets me hear exactly what is on that track. Alternatively, I can solo, you know, my narration.
A tripod is a pain.
Right? And or I can mute my narration and hear everything but that. And that lets me hear exactly what's going on the other tracks. So muting and soloing those things can come in very handy. You can do a similar thing here, although you won't use it very often, is to hide the visuals on a track. Just be aware that when you export, anything you've mute and soloed will not stay muted and soloed. So it will all be normal. So if you have sort of muted something because it's annoying you, you have to remember that that's going to export at full volume. And speaking of full volume, don't forget,
and it takes time to set up,
to keep an eye on your meters here. It's always important that you watch your levels. And wow, it's weird to have me with me. Watch your levels and make sure you're peaking at about -6 with a possible bounce up to -3 every once in a while. Okay, back to your tools. Okay, so slipping and sliding is another one with rippling and rolling that we aren't going to deal with today. Can be useful, but that's kind of a next advanced class for you. If you're feeling pretty good about your editing skills, I highly recommend checking into slipping and sliding and rippling and rolling, your tutorials on that. Your pen tool, we all remember the pen tool. It's how we change volume and things. So if we move in here, let's see, did I switch out the volume here at all? We use the pen tool to, right, change our levels, just like we did with Audacity. And in the same way, if we get too many, we just click and drag it. Shoot, well, that's not working. You can also, alternatively, right-click on it where you put it, your thing there, and delete your keyframe. Keyframes are useful for a whole lot of things, and as you get more and more skilled and get into visual effects, you'll find that keyframes are your friends and sometimes your enemies because they get mystery keyframes and life is miserable. Okay, so you're in the middle of a pretty big timeline and you just want to grab it and move around. You've got the hand tool that just lets you grab it without selecting any of your clips. Alternatively, if you click and hold, that's the zoom tool that lets you zoom in to your timeline, or by holding the option key, you can zoom out. The text tool is a quick type tool. You're better off going up here to your graphics tab and adding graphics that way rather than working with the type tool because it's a little clunky. But if you have an effect already on here, we'll go back to our editing workspace. If you have an effect already on here, oh, that's just a slate. So let's go to this one. So if I have an effect already on here and I want to edit it, my type tool will quickly let me fix a typo or change something. Nice thing about this is if you make multiple of the same ones, you can actually just copy this and paste it again, and then just change the names. So if you were doing courtesy to multiple people for their video, you can just copy this, paste it, and change the name with your type tool. So those are our main tools. A few other things that are handy that are kind of related to tools. Every once in a while, you want to split your audio and video. So you'll see most of the time if I select my clip, my audio and video, of course I picked one that isn't together, my audio and video come together. So if I delete one, I delete them both. Sometimes I want to delete just the audio or just the video. So to do that, what I do is I right-click here, oops, right click in the center of it. Come on. It's being annoying. Okay, right click, and then I unlink. And by unlinking, you'll see I can select either the audio or the video and delete them. So I can delete the video, replace it. Otherwise, you can always just overwrite your video using the overwrite option. And if you have not selected the audio, you can protect it. But sometimes it's just easier to unlink them. And then if for some reason you have unlinked some but you want to link them back together, you just select them both by clicking on them, with the Shift key, and then right click and link again. So you can link them back up together. All right. 2 more things I want to talk about. One of those is marking and marks. So sometimes as you're going along, you sort of find something you want to use, but you don't want to use it right now. So let's say I've decided, oh, I want to remember where this shot is. And I can take a note, but I can also add a marker. And so you'll see right here, this little thing that looks like home plate is a mark, and it adds a mark here. And it shows me the time code. The handy thing about that little guy is I can double click on it. I can name it if you want. Woman on phone. I can change the marker color so that, let's say I want all of my sort of random cutaways to be red. I want my nat sound to be blue. I can choose all of that and say OK. And then you'll see I have a blue marker here. This marker stays even if I go to a different clip and look at a different clip. When I come back here, I still have my marker and I can see where it is. So that can be very handy when you sort of want to just sort of essentially make notes for a few things you want to do. All right, and then the last thing I want to talk about is what's called snapping. Snapping is a useful thing when you want to make sure that you don't leave any gaps in your video. So let's see, I'm just going to drag some of this away. And so now I have a space, and I've decided, oh, I really want to put those back together. What was I thinking? So you'll see that as you come back over, it's almost like it jumps out of your hand to snap them back together. So that's good when you want to be sure that you don't leave a gap. So I'm going to drag these over here, and just as an illustration, I'm going to go back to my main cursor. I'm going to take the one clip and I'm going to drag it over, and you'll see it kind of jumps together. And sometimes that's great, and most of the time that's great, but sometimes you actually intentionally want to leave a little bit of a gap for someplace you're going to leave room. You don't want that, and then it gets annoying. So you'll see right here is this little thing that looks like a magnet, and that turns off snapping. So now you'll see I can deliberately leave a little tiny gap if I want to. So, or I can pull it on top, which is harder to do with snapping on. So snapping can be useful, or it can mess you up if you think it's on and it's not. So if it's not snapping, look up here and make sure you've got snapping turned on, that little magnet. The rest of these, you can do unlinking here, and the rest get sort of more complicated. This is just sort of how your timeline looks. You can do things there. But for the most part, the changing text with a text tool, zooming, your pen tool, your razor, and your select track forward select are going to be your main things that you use. So that is it for the tools lesson.